Hey, listen, if you in your car, if you with your family, if you in the backyard having a cookout, I need you to turn this all the way up, cause it's about to go live. Woo! This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me, and they sure can't take it away. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me, and they sure can't take it away. See the vibes, I know you see the light and how it shines. I'm a child of God, why you look surprised? I'm super fly, I won't apologize, cause I walk in favor, I got flavor. Salt of the earth, I can't lose my savor. Jesus Christ, yeah, that's my savior. Eyes on the cross, I don't see no hate. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Yeah, yeah. I once was lost, but now I'm fine.
What's up, everybody? This joy that I have, the world didn't give it and the world can't take it away. How many here got the joy of the Lord today? Hey, man, I don't know where you may be, wherever you are. We're here in Massachusetts, whether you're in Washington State. I know a lot of people on the West Coast is going to be watching. If you're in California with everything that's going on out there, we're praying for you, and we're praying for restoration in the name of Jesus. But I'm here to tell you that in spite of what situation you may be in, you can still find joy. Hallelujah. So listen, I want you to know that I'm so glad that you're here with us today. My name is Gregory Bloomfield, and you are watching. Let's say my mic is low. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I want you to know that you're watching Motivation Moments, and we are live. We're here with episode number 118. It is awesome, awesome, awesome that we are here. We're past 100 episodes, and now we're at episode 118. Listen, if you are enjoying these podcasts, these episodes, these little nuggets of truth, please let us know by hitting like, share, and subscribe in whatever platform you're using. If you're on YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in. Facebook. We appreciate you. The Facebook audience is actually growing. I noticed that. It's at 281 views or subscribers. Let's get it to 300. Let's get it to 200 on YouTube, Instagram. I see you. I see a whole bunch of people I don't recognize. K Sunshine, Casey, Kit, Catalyst Council, Ada Strickland. I know who she is. Good to see you. And my good friend from Canada, Paul Vaughn Anderson. It's so good to see you. So listen, thank you so much for tuning in. And we are talking about find your purpose and get the bag. How many here know in order to get the bag, you got to protect the bag? And also, if you are a first-time viewer, if you just want to say hello, please let us know where you are watching the podcast from today. I'm expecting a lot of people from the West Coast today. So please let me see where you're watching from. If you're enjoying the episodes, listen, if you've been enjoying the episodes, I want to let you know that I'm going to commit to doing more teaching on Thursdays. So I am going to be doing another teaching on this coming Thursday, but it's going to be a little different. It's going to be a little bit shorter because we're going to have a very special announcement, a big, grand announcement that you don't want to miss. It's about the podcast, and it's also about the ministry that my wife and I have been doing for a while now. So I need you to tune in on Thursday and stay locked in for today. So if you are watching this podcast, make a note, subscribe, so that way you know the next time that we're on, whatever platform you use. So please, Thursday is huge, so you don't want to miss it. I'll talk for a little bit, and then we'll get right into the new announcement. It's going to be amazing. We're also working on season 4. We're currently in season 8, season 4 on the Spotify audio podcasts. So if you enjoyed season 4 with the guests on there, we're going to add season 4. We definitely are going to add season by season. It takes a little bit of time, but we're going to be adding season 4. I also want to give a big shout out to the Berea Seventh-day Adventist Church in Boston, Massachusetts. Everybody give a shout out in Boston. That is an awesome church. It's one of the mother churches in the Boston area. We had our Martin Luther King breakfast, and it was really powerful. It was really great. And if you're in the Boston area, and if you ever want to come to worship with us, we're there on Saturday mornings, but starting at 11 o'clock. And also my Pastor Etzel Cadet is there. He's an amazing man of God, amazing elders. Praise and worship is bananas. You want to check out the church. If you're ever in the Boston area, there are many great churches in Boston. But I highly recommend Berea SDA Church on your Saturday mornings. I want to introduce to you our guest for today. It's her first time on the podcast, and she is a powerhouse. I told you that she is on, we say the right coast here. That's the left coast out there. She is out of Washington State, just outside of Seattle. Her name is, don't get it fooled now, not Julian Kohlbrand. Julian Kohlbrand. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Her nickname is called Jewlz The Budget Nerd, and she has her own podcast called the Debt Rebel Podcast that you can get on YouTube. I believe you can also get it on Spotify and other platforms. Julianne's mission is to empower families to take control of their finances and reclaim their time. Through her coaching practice, she provides practical advice, actionable strategies, and unwavering support to help individuals and families achieve their financial dreams. And after studying personal finance for over 20 years and eliminating over $107,000 consumer debt with her husband, she's learned managing money is more than just numbers and spreadsheets. It's developing a healthy relationship with money, and that has ripple effects in other areas of your life, including your marriage, parenting, and work-life balance. Many people want to get right physically, But a lot of people say they want to get right financially, but they don't know how to get right financially. So this episode is for you, that you can learn some tools. Now, we can only do so much for in an hour, but that's why you want to get in contact with her to help you. There are many amazing people in the personal finance space, whether taxes or money management or accounting. But unless you have your personal finances in order, none of that even matters. So it's really important that you get your finances in order for 2025. So with that being said, I would like to introduce to you, and it looks like the ring is bothering. So let me take off my glasses, so I'm going to get serious. I want you to get ready for the first time guest, but not the last time, all the way from Washington via the internet, Miss Julian Kohlbrand, the Budget Nerd. Yes. Julianne, how are you today?
I'm so good. I'm so good. Over here we call it the West Coast is the best coast. So I'm,
Well, we say the East Coast is the beast. So yeah, well, no, wait. We're talking for them Bible folks, not Mark of the Beast. The beast, the best. The rest of the yeah. Ooh, I stepped in that one. Here, how are you?
If you will, we're up there.
Yeah. You're actually just come to think of it, you're the second guest that I've had out of Washington State.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah. So out of the Seattle. So shout out to Seattle and to everyone who's watching out of who it's still daylight out there where it's dark here.
Yeah, the sun is just setting. That was kind of fun figuring out the lighting for tonight.
Yeah.
We started out and the sun was up and now it's going down. So
nice. So Julianne, how are you today? What's new?
I'm doing really good. I can't believe that we're this far into January. It feels like you and I just had a conversation about doing this episode, and then here we are. So this year already, 2025 is just screaming along, I feel like.
Yeah, it's going quite fast. But so you call yourself the Budget Nerd, Jewlz the Budget Nerd.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how you got passionate about personal finance and how you have. Did you name yourself the Budget Nerd, or did someone crown you with that name? And what makes budgeting so nerdy?
Yeah, no, these are all great questions. So I grew up knowing how to live within my means. My dad was in construction, my mom worked for the school district, and we just spent what we had and nothing more. And so my grandparents were also, my grandma sold insurance, and my grandpa was a vet and worked really hard for what they had, but didn't spend more than they had. And so that was modeled for me through multiple generations. And I also went to school and studied economics. And so I was like, all right, I got this. I have this figured out. And then loved making budgets, following budgets. That's a whole nother conversation that we're probably going to get into here. But following a budget was something that I struggled with. I could make it and tell you, all right, this is how we're going to do it. And but following it was a different story. And when I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next after my daughter was born, and was talking with a life coach friend of mine from my church, and we were just talking. I was like, man, I just love helping people with their finances. And at that point, I had figured out how to follow a budget, and I got really good at it. And so her and I were talking, and I was like, oh, my friends from church and that know me throughout the community call me Jewlz. That was a nickname I got in college, and just kind of stuck. And she's like, Jewlz the Budget Nerd. And I was like, yeah, that's great. And so we just kind of went with it. So that's how Jewlz the Budget Nerd came to be.
All right. So you must be quite proficient in Excel spreadsheets.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I spent many years making Excel spreadsheets, and ironically, that's not where I keep my budget anymore. But that's yeah. I all of the formulas and all the stuff. Sometimes if I do have to play around with them, I'll go back and have to refresh my memory. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've spent many a years in Excel. Love the
I have,
relationship.
I have, I could probably teach advanced Excel. For work, I'm in it all the time. In fact,
Hmm.
some of you, that use Excel, I actually have become quite the pro at the pivot tables. And I'm
Yeah.
learning different formulas that the average person does not talk about, like concatenate a cell.
Yes.
It's like what? No, we just want
Yeah.
to add, subtract. But the reason why I say all of this is because when people think budgets and finance and all type of stuff, they think, okay, CPAs and finance nerds and people like that.
Hmm.
I can't do a budget because I need an accountant to do that. I'm not savvy. I'm not computer literate. I can't do all those things.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who, when they think about numbers, they get scared and end up not doing it? So what would you say to somebody the importance of having a budget, even though they may not be a finance professional?
Yeah, that's good. I in all the years that I've studied personal finance, got in my own debt and got out of it, I realize it's a lot less to do with the numbers and the spreadsheets. So it's 2025. And there's so many apps available to help you with that. Um, so it doesn't have to be on a spreadsheet. You don't have to follow your budget and create your budget in a spreadsheet. It's more about your relationship with your money and figuring out your values, like what matters most to you, and then lining that your budget up, your spending plan up with what your values are. So I like to see, budget. I want to change like the feeling that everyone gets when they hear the word budget because it sounds so restrictive. And even when I started doing it, I was like, ugh, it just it's the other, it's a B word. I'm like, I don't want to use that one. But my goal is to just change it. So it's just our spending plan. That's all it is. It's a spending plan, how we want to spend our money.
Yeah, and I love what you said just now, that your budget, anytime that you have a budget, it shows to an individual or to a group of individuals what your priorities
Um,
are, right?
yeah,
It really shows
100%.
what's important to you.
Yeah.
So, and I want to step back a little bit as to what you said earlier, and I read this in your bio, is that you and your husband removed out of your household over $170,000 in commercial and consumer debt.
Yeah,
Now,
107, yeah.
I understand. Now, somebody who's listening is going to be like, "Oh, lean in, because I've got
Yes.
more than that."
Yeah.
Some people have over 100,000 on one student loan or
Mhm.
20,000 in a credit card. The first question I want to ask is, how did you do it? And walk us through that journey of having 107,000 in debt to no debt. Take
Yeah.
us through that.
So, real talk, I didn't know that actual number until I was getting started with my coaching practice. I hadn't really looked that well at the total number. So we'd paid off some stuff and then we'd paid off some more stuff. But then when I looked back and realized how much when I went through and added it up, I could not believe it. And I remember having this conversation with my dad recently and he's like, I didn't realize it was that bad. And I was like, well, me neither. So that's one of the first things is like have a real like look at it and see what you're committed to, what you owe. Sometimes you'll find out it might be less than you really think because sometimes we can make things bigger in our minds than they really are.
Mhm.
My dad says make mountains out of molehills, and so sometimes we can create these ideas in our head that that's what it we have all of this debt, or maybe we have all of this money but we really don't. And so I'd say like really really dive in and think about and look at what that looks like.
Yeah. A
But
lot of it, money is I think money, 85% of it is psychological. I think people
Mhm.
don't want to look at it because they're going to
Yeah.
get scared, they're going to get intimidated, they're going to get fatigued. So
Yeah.
what you're saying is get over it and look at it. It won't go
Yeah.
away. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, for us, for my husband and I, we just realized we were having arguments about how we were spending our money. We had different views on what financial stability looked like. So we had to have real, honest conversations with ourselves. And we decided we'd rather be married than fight about this. And so we got to work figuring out a plan that worked for both of us. And that was, I'm now on the other side of it. I can say, hey, yeah, just make a plan and follow it. But it's not as easy. But if you have two willing participants, like especially in marriage, if you're a willing participant to do that, then it's going to be a lot easier. And so for us, it was just getting to that place where we were just tired of that paycheck to paycheck cycle and never making progress. And so you just have to get uncomfortable enough that you're like, I'm done with this. And so that's where we got. And then we had to get real with ourselves and honest
So
with
what
where we were.
so those were the first steps then, was basically
Mhm.
to, frankly, and to those who are listening, I think, and especially
Mhm.
those on Instagram, I see my friend Freetone saying, can't stand pivot tables. But you know what? You don't need a pivot table to do a budget. But I guess the first thing really is to overcome your fear, right?
Yeah.
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 And that's even
Because
before
if
you do
nothing
it.
changes, nothing changes. You're just going to keep getting what you have. And so if where you are is good for you, then great. Stay there. But if it's not, then let's figure it out. Let's make a plan and move forward.
Okay. So let's talk about how you did it. So you both of you decided, okay, we're not gonna let this break up our marriage. We're gonna
Yeah.
work towards this, and we're gonna develop a plan. We're gonna rip off the band-aid, as you were saying, even
Yeah.
though it's scabs and it's ugly. We're not gonna
Yeah.
judge. We're gonna fix it. So now
Yeah.
that you've opened the envelopes, you've looked at the statements, you've done all this stuff. What's the next step in terms of how you got out of your $107,000 debt? How did you get out?
Yeah.
What's the next step?
So that was when we got real about making a budget and the one that we could follow. And so my husband, I'm a saver, but I'm also a spender. So we had to like take ownership for what our part was in it, but at the same time, not pointing fingers and saying, okay, well, you spent more and you spent more, and kind of that. We were just like, okay, that's in the past. It's kind of like a hard reset. We're just gonna stop. And so we would go through everything that we had that we were paying on, as far as like our utilities and mortgages and all that stuff, the things that were necessary. And so that's where the first thing I would start with is the things that are going to help you keep the lights on, the things that are going to keep a roof over your head, food in your belly, and transportation to and from work. So those are the things you want to make sure that you focus on first, because that's a way you can protect your income, making sure that you can get to and from work, whether that's your internet bill if you work virtually, or if it's, if you drive, if you have to fly for your work, all that kind of stuff. So whatever it is, make sure that those things are protected. And then, do you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs from like
Yes.
Psych 101? So it's kind
Mhm.
of that bottom level stuff is making sure those basic needs are met. And we can't skip food. So one of the first things I tell my clients is meal planning. And for us, we did that kind of last, which in hindsight, I would have definitely, now knowing how helpful that is, I would have gone back and done that first. That's a game changer, because we waste so much food in this country. And most of it is just because we don't plan well, but it's an easy way to go for convenience because we have
I,
to eat, right?
yeah, I'm a huge meal planning guy. It's like I just believe, and like you said, I mean, one of the great people in the personal finance space, Dave Ramsey, used to say,
Mm-hmm.
if you're trying to get out of debt, you can't look at a restaurant unless you're working in it. So it's like he said, red beans and rice, rice and
Yeah.
beans, red beans and rice. You're not looking at a restaurant. Go
Yeah.
to the grocery store, learn to cook. And again, it's just, I think a lot of times people just lazy. It's like, no, you can't go to Chick-fil-A 4 times a week, right? First of all, it's not
Yeah.
good for you. But second of all, the money that you're spending on burgers or fries or whatever, you could buy a sack of potatoes and cook them yourself or bake them and have healthier meals.
Sure.
Yeah.
The one thing I say to my clients is if you take one step back from the convenience that you usually go to, so like if you usually go through the drive-through, okay, so maybe instead of grabbing the bag of potatoes, maybe you're going to just get the frozen fries and make those at home. So like one step away from that convenience, and that helps a little bit until you're like, okay, I'm comfortable here, and then I can take a step back. Because for us, we found that it was when we kind of do that pendulum swing thing, that extreme, that it was harder. We just felt more restricted. So I was like, okay, if we just take one step away from that, and then figuring out like what's the meal that you tend to go towards convenience. So what's the one that you're like, you know what, I went grocery shopping, and the last thing I want to do when I get home is cook, because you went through you went through the store and grocery shop, which I do grocery pickup because it removes the temptation for myself to grab stuff. But maybe that's the meal that you plan ahead. And so for us, like planning a whole month of meals or a whole week of meals at first was really just a daunting task. So we just picked the one that was what was the hardest? What was the one that if it was a busy night or we had activities or whatever, that what's the night that you're going to go towards convenience, and then just plan that ahead of time when you look at your schedule.
Yeah.
That was helpful.
I think it really to getting on a budget and getting financially savvy it's really, 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 really important that you're intentional and that you focus on the prize, and that is to no longer have debt, right? And no longer have these issues. And if you live uncomfortably for a while, you will live comfortably later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and it's really one thing that, and I did an episode on my podcast with my husband, because we've had this conversation behind the scenes a lot, but a lot of my listeners are like, well, what does your husband think about all of this? Because I'm pretty much the driving force in it, but now he's totally on board. And so that was a fun episode, because he realized that our life is so much better now that we've done these things, and we learned a lot of things in that process. We learned a lot about ourselves, but where our marriage like grew so much better because we had those conversations. Some of them are really challenging, but those things that now we've created a life for ourselves that we at one point didn't even think was possible, but also we just enjoy it so much more. Our day-to-day life, I get to work when I want to work. He's created a work schedule for himself that allows us to both take my daughter to school. We walk her to school in the morning. Nice. And she's 5, she's in kindergarten. It's just fun to be able to do those little things as a family and focus on those moments of life, because as you know, kids grow up really fast. And the next thing you know, they're going off to college or, buying their first house and moving on with their lives. And so having those little moments like that is what we've found is really important in creating those memories together.
Awesome. We're here with Miss Julian Kohlbrand, and she is Jewlz The Budget Nerd. So I hope you're getting some helpful tips. Put something in the comments if this stuff is helping you out on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube. So you've identified the necessities. A roof over, you gotta have pay the rent, mortgage. You gotta pay utilities. You gotta have food, and you gotta have transportation. So now we've secured that.
Yeah.
Next, what is next? Is it the credit cards? Is it the personal loans? Because there's some different schools of thought where people are like, okay, first thing you need to do, and when I say this, you know who says it. You got to have $1,000 in emergency savings right now. And then after that, then you got to do your debt snowfall.
Yeah,
and
the snowball.
Absolutely no credit cards ever. Cut them up, put them in a pitcher of water, freeze them, cut them. Oh,
Put them right here.
put them
That's
there.
our last one. That's our last credit card.
Put them in frame them. Yes.
Yeah.
What techniques do you, okay, now that you've secured the necessities, what
Mm-hmm.
techniques do you recommend to your clients? And also, is it customized depending on the client? So, for example, if they have emergency savings, we can focus on the debt, build the emergency savings, hold off on paying off the debt. What are some of the techniques that you would recommend to someone who's listening to?
Yeah, everything you just said is absolutely spot on. That's what I teach. That's what we did, that $1,000 emergency fund. I would say the things that would kind of maybe change this on a case-by-case basis, and I went through this with a client recently. She was getting ready to go on maternity leave. And so that was a scenario that we're like, okay, maybe you need to have a little bit more than that $1,000 because there's going to be some extra expenses with the delivery of her baby and things like that, that we wanted to make sure that she had those set so she wasn't running to credit cards to take care of those things and make that process and that time in her life and her family's life as stress-free as possible. Mm-hmm. And so there are scenarios where maybe $1,000 isn't quite enough. And so that's definitely a conversation on a case-by-case basis. But that's exactly what we did, because if we think about the most recent emergency that we had, usually it has something to do with a medical emergency. So for us, it was taking our daughter to the emergency room. She had some breathing issues, and so that was a $500 copay because it was an emergency visit. Right. So that was from our emergency fund because we didn't have it in our monthly budget because we didn't know when it was going to happen. And that's really what that $1,000 is for, is we know things are going to come up in life, but we just don't know when. And so that's what that is.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we put in the chat, well, not in the chat, but why don't we put in the Chiron? The first step is set up your emergency fund. So I really want us to be very pragmatic and very practical for the audience to see. Set up an emergency fund. So that's step. It really isn't step one. Step one is make sure the rent is paid and make sure all that stuff is taken care of. Make sure that, But after you take care of the necessities, set up your emergency fund.
Yeah.
Would you recommend that it's start with 1,000 or start with 3 months of your living expenses, or a blend of both? Or what would you say? A minimum is 1,000. What would you recommend?
I'd say this day and age, a minimum of 1,000.
Okay.
And that's exactly what we did. And then that's when we moved into that debt snowball. So we did follow the Ramsey steps, and that's what worked really well for us. And then that next step after your debt snowball is that extended emergency fund. So that 3 to 6 months. But so after that $1,000 is moving into that debt snowball, and that is just listing all of your debts, balance smallest to largest. Yeah.
So let's write that down as well for some people, because some people may not know the Ramsey method. And I will say this personally, I like the Ramsey method. I think it's very easy and it works. There's challenges, but it works. So number 2 would be set up the debt snowball. Right?
Snowball. Yep.
Snowball. I always get it. Snow. Not the debt snowfall, it's raining debt. No, that's what you don't want to have.
Correct.
The debt snowball, right? So that is, as Julianne said, list the balances that you owe.
Yeah.
Right. And the one key thing with that is don't worry about interest rates right now.
Yeah.
See, people get tripped up. It's like, oh, well, it's 23% on this credit card. Look, how much do you owe on a credit card, or how much do you owe? And one of the things that, if I can add, some people have IRS debt. I have seen, and some people may disagree with me on this, put that at the very top, regardless of the amount. Deal with the IRS. If you owe $5,000 to the IRS, make sure that you pay that off as fast as you can. Yeah. But obviously, with the credit card, if you have a $500 credit card, pay that off. But don't use the credit card to pay off the IRS debt. That's silly.
Yeah. For us, it was we had we had a lot of debts, and we couldn't make the minimum payments at one point on all of them. So we had to get real honest with ourselves, and we had to get real honest with our creditors and say, hey, that's why a budget also, if you're really underwater, having your budget and being able to submit that to your creditors and say, hey, this is my plan, this is what I'm working on, that's going to get you more credibility and give them an opportunity to say, hey, this person's working on it and being honest about it, and not trying to, dodge it, which that's most of the time what they get is, people dodge their phone calls and stuff like that. So we spent a lot of time on the phone talking to them and saying, hey, this is what we're working on, and yes, I'd love to send you more money right now, but we couldn't. And so this is what I have available, and this is what I can send you this month. And we just set up plans for all of our debts until they were gone.
And that's taking accountability. That's also being, frankly, it's being a good steward. It's not, life happens, and sometimes people have to go into debt. It's sometimes things uncertain, or sometimes it's ignorance. You didn't know how to manage your money properly, and now you know, you're trying to do better. So there's no judgment here.
Right.
I think what you just said was take responsibility. Yes, I owe this, but I can't pay you right now, but I'm working towards it. Can you give me a 30-day plan or a 60-day plan? Own it. I think that's really important. Own it. You went on the vacation on the credit card and you had no cash, and now you got to pay it.
Yeah. For us, sometimes it was putting utility bills. We put our power bill a lot on credit cards, because when we first bought our house, I was in real estate, so I was getting paid pretty decently, just not consistently. And so that's when we got, I like to say, financially disorganized, because that's really what it was. Is we were disorganized.
Yeah. It just and here's the other thing. Just because you're a finance professional doesn't mean you can't be jacked up financially.
Yeah.
Many of the people that sell mutual funds and stocks have filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy too.
Yeah. Well, and I also think, like, it's one of, our culture teaches, like, it's one of the 3 things that you don't talk about with people, because it's such a topic that can make people uncomfortable. And I also think, like, that's what gets us where we are sometimes, if we're not really willing to have these honest conversations. Now, maybe it's not something that you're just gonna start a podcast about and then talk about your personal finances, but and I when I was going through that, that's definitely not something I would have done. And now that I'm on the other side of it and I see how much that's changed our lives, that's why I'm super passionate about it, and that's why I'm sharing my story, because I know that even though I had all of this head knowledge, we still got there. And so I think it's important to share those stories, and like you have motivation moments. Like, this is what it's about, is sharing those things that we've learned along the way so that other people can learn from them, right?
Exactly. I think that is so important, and being transparent and giving practical knowledge to people. So we had talked about emergency fund, debt snowfall, and then if we're going to follow in the Ramsey methodology, I believe step 3 is to fully fund your emergency fund with 3 to 6 months of emergency savings.
Yeah, living expenses. So the cool thing about that, though, when we got to that spot, was when you're not making debt payments, that 3 to 6 months of living expenses is so much smaller.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Because if you're making $1,000 or $2,000 in payments on debt, and then you actually look at the things that you need to live, it's a lot. You have $2,000 extra dollars, and if you're doing 3 to 6 months, that's quite a smaller number than you would if you were trying to save up for your debt and savings at the same time.
Once the biggest hurdle, I think, is the debt piece. And that's where you have to, because it's like, oh, I see a sale, or let's go out to eat, or we could go on vacation. No, you need to make that minimum payment. And the thing is that I think in our culture, and especially with the economy and things could change at any moment, it's really important, I think, to even strive. At the time, the book says 3 to 6 months. Dare I say 6 to 12 months? Because especially with what happened with COVID and with people losing their jobs.
Yeah.
I really think it's important that people, 3, I don't think is enough. I think 6 is the minimum. Obviously start with 1,000, but then just strive for 6, maybe 12. Because you want to be able to, if you have a job that's messing with you and you can just quit on good terms. You don't have to worry about unemployment. You have to worry about all that stuff. You can take care of yourself for a little bit longer while you find the right opportunity.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely on a, case by case basis, depending on what your job is. Cause there's more jobs that are more, more stable. And then there's some that are, commission based. And so like for my husband and I, when he first got out of the Navy, he was selling cars and I was selling real estate. And that was in 2008. So we know what happened in 2008. That was where it really started to go bad for us real fast. And, we had kind of for lack of a better term, we had painted ourselves in a corner. Like we had to figure out something else. And so because we were both on commission and the economy tanked then in both of those industries, we had to figure out something else. And so now when we make our financial decisions, we go back to that time. And just like my parents and my grandparents remember the 80s and when the that whole thing happened. And so it's remembering that history does repeat itself in certain areas. And so we want to make sure that we're aware of that, but creating a life for ourselves that allows us to respond instead of react, I think is really important. And that's what has allowed us to be able to make the decisions that we did with our finances. But getting rid of that debt made it so that when the pandemic hit and I had to say, okay, I was working at a nonprofit that helped teens and a ministry that I absolutely loved, but my daughter's only young once, and it was a real struggle to try and do ministry online when it wasn't my area of expertise. I was more of an in-person. And then I had a toddler. And so we got to make the decision because our finances were organized that I could stay home with her. And so, because that's time I'll never get back. So,
yeah. And when you have money and when you manage your finances properly, and I think this is really the salient point, when you manage your finances properly and you're a good steward, you have more options in life.
Yeah.
Right? You have more options in life. And isn't that what we all want? Especially we bring it to the kingdom. We want to do kingdom work because it gives us the most passion, but it's hard to do that. I would say it's hard to lift your hands and praise God when debt is pulling your hands down like this, right? That's why so many people are stressed and all kind of stuff at going to churches and worshiping and stuff, and they can't feel it because they're so overwhelmed with financial pressures. So I just think it just allows you to worship better.
100%. Could not agree more with that.
Yeah. So we're here once again with Miss Julian Kohlbrand. We're talking about budgets and we're talking about how she got out of debt and how you can get out of debt too. One of the things that I wanted to say, so as you know, with the Dave Ramsey plan, after that, it's fully fund your 401k, your college fund, pay off your house, and then be an enormously generous giver after all of that, right? So I want to ask.
I think it's important to be generous though when you're going through those steps. And he does talk about that too. Like it's depending on if you're, where you are in your faith journey, I think that's really important for us. It is giving to our church. It's really important. But I also think that depending on where you are in those steps, like there's other ways to be generous with your time and with things in your home. There's that was one of the things for us as we were going through and we were selling a lot of things, but there are some things that maybe in our home that aren't of use to us anymore that we can bless another ministry or people in our community with. And so that's another way that you can be generous. It might just look a little bit different than we think of giving money, but it could be blessing someone else that way. So I think it's really important to be generous throughout the whole process.
Serving is so important as well, like you just said. I would say that tithing is important. But some people, that it's amazing that this is a controversial thing to say in the church world, but I believe in tithing. My church supports tithing and offering. I believe that when you're faithful in God's resources, he'll be faithful with yours. I strongly believe that. And even people in the corporate world, forget the religious world, but in the corporate world, a lot of people are judged on how they're good corporate citizens and how they give back to communities and how they give back to support different nonprofits and philanthropic issues. So it blesses their company knowing that they're taking care of their employees and taking care of the resources around them. So if the secular world can do stuff like that and they understand the concepts of giving and sowing, I believe so much more should the body of Christ have the same mindset.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And
it changes us when we give, though. It changes us. Like for us, it allowed us to see ways that God showed up in our life, and the way that he used us was really cool. I mean, there's a few circumstances where someone actually gifted us a car, and then later on when we were in a position, we were able to gift a car to someone else.
Yes.
And it wasn't a brand new car or anything like that, but it was something that filled a need for someone else, just like someone else had filled a need for us. And so it was such a cool experience to be able to allow God to use me in that way and use my family in that way, and then see how it helped someone else, And so it's kind of like when you're in the drive-through, Starbucks, and you pay for the coffee behind you, it's like that has ripple effects all, throughout someone's day with their life. Like there's so many ways that our acts and our obedience of generosity I can just, change the world.
And also recognizing, and I love what you're saying there, but let me add another thing, recognizing that we're just stewards of what God's given us, right? I saw this meme on the internet of a homeless guy at a bench sitting with a business guy in a suit. And the claim was never, ever, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, never, ever look down on anybody, because one day God might change those people's places, right? And God will bless us with our resources, not only if we're good stewards, but if we're generous. I believe that if you're mean and you're just nasty and you have nothing, how can God give you more when you abuse the little that you have? So I really believe, for those who, this is a Christian podcast, so I make no apology for that. So I'm saying that, like, I believe in a God that has the concept of reaping what you sow. When you sow good seeds in the earth, you will reap a harvest. So a good harvest. If you sow bad seeds, then you'll reap a bad harvest. So it is so important for us with our finances. Our finances are our ministry. And how we spend our money and how we spend our resources is a testament and a witness of what is important and what's in our heart. So I love that. So a budget, getting back to budgeting, is the way to show what's our priorities and what our heart posture is. Even if you don't know Excel. Yeah, you got a pad and a paper. It works the same. Mm-hmm. So we have people that want to get better at budgeting, and you mentioned that you have a podcast. I've had a chance to listen to it. It's very informative. I endorse it.
Thank you.
Support.
Thank you.
Well, I'll let you talk a little bit about the podcast and where people can hear it and what people can expect when they subscribe to your podcast.
Yeah. So it's called the Debt Rebel Podcast, Personal Finance for Families. And I just give it's about 15-minute episodes when I do solos. There are some interviews in there that I invite some guests in. I've interviewed my pastor and my husband, my younger sister, talking about her breast cancer journey and how when she was diagnosed, I was able to, because both of us were in a spot financially that I could be there for her. And so I was able to be there for her through most of her surgeries and her chemotherapy and radiation and all of those things, so that she could show up and be there for her daughters because she's got 3 young kids. So I tell some stories like that about why it's so important to spend that time on our finances because we don't know what's coming next, but being able to respond and not react is getting those things organized. And so that's available on YouTube, Spotify, all the platforms. The website there will take you and you can listen to the latest episodes, but they're about 15 minutes unless it's an interview. And then I like to go a little bit longer. And then at the end of the interview episodes, I do a dad joke in honor of my dad, who I learned a lot of my financial wisdom from. But it's just practical tips, and then some of it's some mindset stuff. I kind of am all over just whatever I hear that listeners need, conversations that I have with my clients. I'm like, hey, I keep having these conversations over and over again. So this is going to be a great podcast episode. So I love recording the ones that listeners say, hey, I want to know more about this. So yeah.
Check it out. I've listened to it and I've enjoyed it. And like I said, it's very informative. And being in the podcast space myself, I listen to a lot of podcasts for inspiration and for information. And I can say this podcast will bless you. And it's a really good listen. And a lot of good information is being bestowed in this podcast. So check it out, the Debt Rebel Podcast. We have the website, and we also have your Instagram as well, Jewlz The Budget Nerd. So for those of you on Instagram, check her out as well.
Yeah. I'm on all platforms as Jewlz The Budget Nerd, but Instagram is the one that's probably the best to reach me at if you want to send me a DM. So
is this where someone, if they wanted to talk to you further about a consultation, could they?
Yeah, that's a great spot.
Yeah, great spot.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So we're just okay. So Instagram, we got it there, Jewlz The Budget Nerd. So everybody on Instagram, make sure you check out Julianne. Remember, it's Julianne, not Julia.
Yes.
Julianne. I learned that.
I'm named after my grandma Julia.
All right, cool. So with the time that we have left, I want to ask you one final question. And for those who, please, if you enjoyed this, subscribe to all of our channels, including Instagram as well. I want to ask you a final question for someone who wants to mirror what you have done. From 107,000 in debt to 0 in debt, and you intend to stay 0 in debt to build your financial legacy. But it started with your budget. Could you recap or mention the 3 steps for someone to start in 2025 to get their financial house in order?
Yeah. So the first one is just being really honest with yourself. if nothing changes, nothing changes. So be honest with yourself and say, hey, this is where I am. And don't the shame of maybe past decisions, that's in the past, kind of like from the Lion King, Rafiki like hits Simba off over the top of the head and he says, doesn't matter, it's in the past, right? So that's what it is. It's in the past. So just be honest with yourself and say, hey, I'm today I'm a new person. I'm going to do better. And so that's the first thing that I would say, is just be honest with yourself. And then the second thing is to make that budget and just take care of those necessities. So making sure that you have food on the table, a roof over your head, and that you're protecting your income, being able to get to and from work. And then in the process of that is really looking at your values. And that's that third one, is making sure that when you create your spending plan, when you create your budget, that it lines up with what matters most to you. So I know, Gregory, your listeners are people of faith. And so making sure that you are lining that up first, and then what is next, what are some other things in your life that are important. So like for myself, it was family, and so making sure that we created some moments within our family, but making sure that that showed on our budget. And so if you and I, maybe we saw someone's budget, we would know exactly what matters most to them without ever having a conversation. And so take a step back after you've created that budget, is what is this on paper or in an app? That's what we use now, but I started out on paper. What does that look like? And does it say, I know exactly what matters? So
point number one, be honest with yourself. Point number two, make a budget and protect your income. Point number three is align your values with your budget. Point number three is align your values with your budget. That's really important. Because again, I remember a pastor years ago. He went, and it was like stewardship week at the church, or that particular weekend to talk about stewardship. And out of his suit pocket, he pulled out his checkbook. Some of you don't even know what a checkbook is, but back in the day, we wrote checks. We're dating ourselves, but he just basically took a checkbook and a magnifying glass, and he put the magnifying glass to the checkbook and basically said, we can see what's important to you by the checks you write, or what you swipe, or what you purchase online. Those are of that those show your values and your addictions. And they can also show what's important to you. And when we talk about seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all the things added unto you, is your spending habits and your budget aligned to your beliefs and your values and all things? Do you? And then obviously you have to take care of home. The other thing too is that I think it's really important. Point number two is really important, is protect your home, right? You can't be saving the world and your home is falling apart. In fact, if you want to save the world and want to be a blessing to others, you first got to take care of your home. Right?
So, not just the structure too, the people in it. You got to make sure they're all, everyone and everything is handled in your home.
I can't be feeding starving children in Africa or in Asia, and my wife hasn't eaten in 2 days. Or my kids. That's a problem. You can't be feeding people at the food kitchen or the soup kitchen at the church, and we're eating stale bread at the house. We can't do that. No. But we could go on for there's so many levels of personal finance that we could touch. We may have to do this again. We need to do this again.
I love that.
And maybe have some Q&A from the audience in terms of they
that would be fun,
and they can ask us questions and see if the audience is interested in that, let us know in the chat as well. But we've run out of time, but we've not run out of message. Any final things you want to say before we log off for the evening?
Make some room for fun. Make some room for fun in your in your budget. So that could be a little bit, but just make some room for fun. Enjoy life. It's supposed to be lived, and that's what God wants to, is want us to be joy filled. And so it doesn't have to be lavish, but make a little room for fun.
Yeah, and pay the mortgage. Praise the Lord. Amen. This was an awesome time. Thank you so much, Julianne, for your time, and all the best with your consulting and with your podcast.
Thank you.
And any way we can support, let us know.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. This is great.
No problem. No problem. Hey, and if you enjoyed this episode, why don't you do me a favor? Why don't you share it with your friends and loved ones, or they're on YouTube, Facebook, on Instagram. And also, the best currency that you can give is to liking and sharing, and most importantly, subscribing to the channel. That helps the algorithm, that helps us reach more people. It helps put these episodes in the faces of more people. And also, if you would like to prayerfully consider sowing a seed into this podcast ministry, you can do so via Cash App and by PayPal. The information is below. So if you want to go on PayPal, just look me up at bloomfieldting@gmail.com or Cash App, $ Bloomfield Ting. You do not want to miss this Thursday. Put it on your calendar. I'm going to be doing a teaching and a special announcement that will bless your life. You don't want to miss it. Mark your calendars. It's going to be awesome. Until the next time. Yes, Thursday, January 23rd, special announcement coming. I'll do a quick motivation teaching, and we will move into the special announcement. And then, I don't know if we have the flyer, but we also have next Sunday is going to be, yes, my buddy Craig Campbell. He's no stranger to the show, and we're going to have a really good conversation on entrepreneurship, transitioning from working corporate to an entrepreneurial life and what that looks like. So you don't want to miss these episodes. And I want you to have an amazing night. Be warm, be blessed. Your finances you can get the victory over your finances one brick at a time. And just put Jesus in your life, make your priorities, and ask God to help you to manage your finances better. Until next time, God bless you, and be encouraged, be inspired, and be motivated. This is the Motivation Moments Podcast with Gregory Bloomfield. God bless you. Have a wonderful night.